Hello artists, and welcome to another episode of Paint With Me Basics. So today we're going to take a look at 3 basic steps to help you with your painting. First of all, you can see here I'm just going to quickly sketch in the basic shapes for a cloudscape that I'm going to be painting. I'm using a light blue leaded pencil just to keep everything really light and it won't blend or mix with my paints or show through. So when I do add my paint on top, I won't see my pencil marks. Okay, so our tip number 1 is work back to front. And what I mean by this is from your background to your foreground in your composition. So you can see here that I'm actually blocking in the background, which in this case, because it's a skyscape, a cloudscape, is actually the sky. So I have mixed my ultramarine with some soft mixing white, and I am just blocking in the sky color around my cloud shapes. You want to lay in your background first. It can be really difficult if you try to add your background later, especially if you have very complicated shapes in your midground and foreground. Okay, so tip number 2 is work light to dark. This means working in your light areas, and any dark tones or values that you add should be added last. So you want to go very light at first. This is especially true if you are working in the medium, say watercolor. So we're just going to be blocking in here our light areas first, which are sort of the highlights on the tops of the clouds. So I've mixed a small amount of Payne's Gray into my soft mixing white to give me just a very soft, light white color. And you can see I'm just blocking that in along the edges of the clouds where the highlights are. So again, working light to dark, I'm blocking in all the light areas first, the highlights, just so I can place those and see, and then we'll move on to the next step. In this section, continuing with the last tip of work light to dark, I'm going to start to block in some of my midtones and darker tones, which are going to make up the body of the cloud. So again, I have mixed a small amount of Payne's Gray with my soft mixing white, and as well a bit of my ultramarine, just to give the body of my clouds that blue color that they're sort of reflecting from the sky. So you can see again here, just working through sort of a mid-tone, blocking it in underneath those highlights that I've already put in. And to sort of smooth out and blend those edges, I'm trying to work fairly fast. I am working with acrylic paint, which I don't have any sort of a slow drying medium in there. So I need to work fairly fast so that while the paint is still wet, I can go ahead and blend the edges then between my midtones and my highlights. And so you can see me at some points doing that. Also, a little pro tip that I like to do sometimes is you can see me here grabbing just a dry paintbrush with no paint on it and going ahead and blending some of those areas between the two values of paint. I really like to use an extra paintbrush just to help soften some of the edges on those paint lines. And now our third and final tip, work gross to fine. And what I mean by that is gross means large. So we've blocked in all of our large areas. We blocked in the sky, we blocked in the cloud areas with our highlights and our midtones. And so now we work on the fine details, adding those little tiny finishing touches. And so you can see here, I'm going back in with some of my very light white color to pop out some of the highlights on the clouds. And I'm using a very fine brush here and just trying to get some of those little details in. And that's the last tip. Once you've blocked in all your big areas, then you can go and add in the smaller details.